Werner Herzog is one of the most influential and prolific filmmakers of the modern era. Known for his wide variety of films spanning multiple genres, he has also evolved into a cultural icon for his distinct personality and unique perspective on the mundane.
So many failures. That's astonishing, yes. It was a clean one.
I do watch some
it.
trash TV, like, let's say, WrestleMania. And there
Hell
was,
yeah.
Hell yeah.
it's very interesting because it's a very crude form of drama. And I have nothing against, let's say, once in a while, it isn't on the air anymore. Here comes Honey Boo Boo.
As well as his particular interest in the extreme, unusual, and deranged.
Cool, is that a staircase to nowhere?
Yes, it is. Good eye. Remember the Pawnee doll head factory?
This was a doll head factory?
No, this was a holding cell for people who went insane on the assembly line.
What people may not know is the very real insanity that often took place behind the scenes of his films. He's considered among the pioneers of the new German cinema of the 70s, alongside Rainer Werner Fassbinder and Wim Wenders, though he possessed a more guerrilla approach to making movies. Herzog is known for being more hands-on with his filmmaking, often shooting at real locations instead of in studios, and preferring to shoot spontaneously and in the moment, without a reliance on excessive planning and storyboarding.
For example, I do not use a storyboard. I think it's an instrument of the cowards.
Werner Herzog has always maintained that the best filmmaking advice is to experience life authentically, such as being a bouncer in a sex club or a warden in a lunatic asylum. Having been cited in his book as saying, "A lot of what you see in my films isn't invention. It's very much like life itself, my own life. If you have an image in your head, hold on to it because, as remote as it might seem, at some point, you might be able to use it in a film." I have always sought to transform my own experiences and fantasies into cinema. In his film school, he prefers to teach more practical skills such as lockpicking and forgery, which is more in line with his own personal experiences, having started from stealing his first camera from the Munich Film School as a student. His first short film at 19, Heracles, was footage of bodybuilders working out at a gym that he stitched together with archival footage. His next short film, Game in the Sand, about 4 children and a rooster in a cardboard box, was never publicly released. Herzog later recounted that shooting got out of hand and compared the process to his controversial second feature, Even Dwarfs Started Small. The film was received with outrage upon its release, and the director even received death threats for the film's controversial content. The movie revolves around a group of dwarves who break out of an isolated institution, leaving a trail of havoc in their wake. Scenes that were particularly under fire included moments of chicken cannibalism, piglets suckling from a dead mother pig, and a scene of the dwarves crucifying a monkey. While shooting a scene where a car drives around in a circle with no one at the wheel, one actor was run over, though he immediately recovered. Later, the same actor caught on fire during a flower burning scene. After all these consecutive injuries, Herzog made amends by promising to jump into a cactus patch and letting the actors film it if no more accidents occurred on set. The rest of the film wrapped without a hitch, and the director made good on his word. He later said, "Getting out was a lot more difficult than jumping in."
At the time, there was only one hotel with 8 rooms. There was nothing far or wide. There was nothing here either, except for a single hut where I used to sleep. A woman lived there. She was a native Indian woman, a hunchback dwarf with 9 children. She also had 100 or 150 guinea pigs, which were there to eat, but at night they crawled all over me, and that was uncomfortable.
Werner's next feature was his first major hit, Aguirre, The Wrath of God. While location scouting for Aguirre, Herzog narrowly avoided taking Lanza Flight 508, which was later struck by lightning and crashed in the Amazon. The sole survivor, 17-year-old Julianne Koepke, later became the subject of Herzog's documentary, Wings of Hope. Shooting from the remote mountains of Peru to the depths of the Amazon rainforest, the film follows the mad conquistador Aguirre, whose insane desire to fulfill his own grandiose fantasies could only be portrayed by one man. This marked the first of his many collaborations with actor Klaus Kinski, which was the beginning of a collective madness shared throughout both their lives.
Why do you work together? Because he's crazy. And so I am, that's why.
It's a perfect combination of the mad people and madmen.
The two had first met while the then struggling actor was renting a room in the apartment where the 13-year-old Werner had been living with his mother and two brothers. Even back then, Kinski was known for his wild temper and crazed attitude.
Kinski had been living nearby in an attic without furniture, just bare beams, and he had covered everything knee-high with dead leaves and posed as a starving artist and walked around stark naked. And Kinski had locked himself in this bathroom for 2 days and 2 nights, for 48 hours, and in his fits of maniacal fury, he smashed everything to smithereens.
On the set of Aguirre, Kinski was feared by both the cast and crew for his violent outbursts.
He was impulsive, unpredictable, half mad. He was not quite normal. Aggressive, he had a diabolical character.
He would suddenly explode at extras, lashing out at them for getting distracted. During one scene, Kinski swung his sword at one actor's head repeatedly and would have killed him if he weren't wearing a helmet, though he kept a permanent scar on his forehead to remember Kinski by. In another incident, while the cast and crew were playing cards, Kinski, enraged by the commotion, took his Winchester rifle and fired 3 shots into the hut they were playing in, blowing off an extra's finger. The tables would later be turned, however, when after an especially nasty argument, Kinski threatened to leave the set, reportedly forcing Herzog to pull out a gun on Kinski, threatening to kill him and then himself if he did not finish the film.
And I told him I had a rifle not on me, but by the time he reached the next bend in the river, there would be 8 bullets in his head, and the 9th one would be in mine. And he had enough instinct to know that this wasn't a joke anymore. And then he screamed for the police like a madman.
The pair would go on to work together on many more projects, such as Nosferatu the Vampire, Wojciech, and Fitzcarraldo, the latter reuniting them once again in the Amazon. He had already completed 40% of the film when its lead actor, Jason Robards, caught a bad case of dysentery and under advice from his doctor was unable to rejoin the production. This delay also meant that his co-star, Mick Jagger, who played Fitzcarraldo's assistant Wilbur in the movie, had to drop out due to a scheduling conflict to go on tour with his band, the Rolling Stones. So Herzog had to write the character out of the film. This inevitably led Herzog to recruit Klaus Kinski as the new leading man.
If I abandon this project, I would be a man without dreams, and I don't want to live like that. I live my life or I end my life with this project.
The production of the film is famously, or infamously, one of the most outrageous technical accomplishments in movie history. The film details the exploits of the rubber baron Fitzcarraldo and his dream of transporting a boat through the Amazon to seek his fortune. This feat was literally carried out by more than 100 extras, hauling a 320-ton steamboat up a steep hill over the course of several weeks. This also meant that they had to spend days cutting a path for the boat to pass through, over half a mile deep through the dense rainforest, while constantly having to create new routes due to the muddy terrain, which made it impossible to traverse. This dangerous operation had the native extras fearing for their lives, as the rope and pulley system they had devised for hauling the ship could have easily broken and killed everyone involved.
Nosotros vamos a estar empujando el barco y el dueño del barco debe estar ahí atrás del barco también. Si es que nosotros morimos, él también muere, pues, el dueño.
De baixar, então ele arrasta tudo que tem aqui, todos esses materiais são arrastados, são trazidos. Compreendeu? Então seria uma catástrofe.
Aside from this monumental effort, the film was consumed by chaos from the get-go. Before the shooting began, rising tensions between neighboring tribes and the local government fueled fears that the film crew would exploit, torture, and even kill them. Some of the indigenous natives who had joined the film as extras shared some of the more disturbing rumors they had heard.
Entonces que los gringos iban a sacar la cara.
Sí, pues va a ir a sacar cara, te va a sacar tu grasa para avión, o sea, despachón.
This led to the crew to move from their original base camp, which was later burned down by hostile tribes as soon as they left. 3 replica boats were made for different shooting scenarios, though they were often run aground or left stuck due to the unpredictable nature of the jungle, which would often lead to constant delays, lasting from weeks to months. The film cinematographer, Thomas Mauck, cut his hand open after falling with the camera while filming a bumpy scene on the boat and had to get stitches without anesthetic. A neighboring Amawaka tribe later raided their camp one night, leaving 3 people being struck with arrows in their hip, neck, and stomach.
This is the arrow that hit the man through the throat, and there's still some blood on it. So...
You gonna keep the arrows?
Well, yeah, maybe for my little son. He will be excited to know that this went through a man.
And in yet another incident, a Peruvian logger involved in the production was bitten by a venomous snake and had to use a chainsaw to amputate his foot to save himself. This apparently irritated Kinski, who was far from pleased about having the attention taken away from him.
I can foresee a lot of trouble, and we have had enough. We have had enough trouble. I'm running out of fantasy. I don't know what else can happen now.
In the midst of the high tension on set, an even bigger tragedy suddenly struck at the height of shooting. 2 passenger planes carrying 5 crew members crashed in the Amazon, leaving them in critical condition. Though they all miraculously survived, one was left paralyzed. The director recalls the events of this day in several interviews.
But the situation was this. We had a plane crash. We only knew the plane was down, 6 people in it. We tried to figure out where was it. Can we send out a rescue party? Kinski arrives screaming, already foam at his mouth, and steps that close in my face and yells at me for an hour and a half. And I try to persuade him. I try to say, Klaus, we have a plane down. 6 people may be dead. We have to organize a search party. And he would yell about his lukewarm coffee.
The production was so extreme that a making of documentary called Burden of Dreams was made alongside the movie by filmmaker Les Blanc, detailing the crew's traumatic experiences and their relationship with the indigenous tribes.
If I believed in the devil, I would say the devil was right here and is still right here. It becomes very questionable because people have lost their lives. People have been in a plane crash and 5 of them in critical condition. 1 of them paralyzed, and one starts to question the profession itself. I don't know, it's very much of it is too crazy and too just not what a man should do in his life. all the time. Even if I get that boat over the mountain and somehow I finish that film, anyone can congratulate me and talk me into finding it marvelous. Nobody on this earth will convince me to be happy about all that. Not until the end of my days.
Towards the end of shooting, the chief of the local Machiguanga tribe, whose tribespeople were featured in the film, offered to kill Kinski himself, though Herzog had to politely decline.
They would have killed him undoubtedly if I had wanted it. I at once regretted that I had held the Indians back from their purpose. By the way, the proposal to do away with Kinski came from this chief.
Their complicated and tumultuous friendship became the subject of Herzog's documentary, My Best Fiend, released 8 years after Kinski's passing.
Every gray hair on my head I call Kinski.
The film details the storied history between the two artists, from their first meeting to their lifelong collaboration.
Peru, the train tracks along the Urubamba River, Kinski's and my river of destiny, so to speak. And this is what this same place looks like at high water. It seemed to me like a metaphor for our turbulent relationship.
Wenn Sie einen Erregten haben wollen, dann lassen Sie ihn erregt sein. Und sonst sagen Sie, er ist nicht erregt. Gut, ja, ich kann ja. Also!
And how their love-hate relationship fueled each other's fire.
Leck mich doch am Arsch, Mensch! Wir drehen einen Film!
In his autobiography, which is of course to a high degree fictitious, he describes me, our relationship. And he said, Werner, nobody will read this book if I don't write very bad stuff about you. If I wrote that we get along very well together, nobody would buy it. The scum only want to hear about the dirt all the time. Kinski and I complimented each other in a strange way. I think he needed me just as much as I needed him. Only in public he could never admit it.
Although much of their animosity was played up by the media, there were some moments where the duo were actively at each other's throats.
Together we were like two critical masses which result in a dangerous mixture when they come into contact. Something that became highly explosive. It went so far that one day I seriously planned to firebomb him in his house. This was prevented only by the vigilance of his Alsatian shepherd.
Despite all this, the two shared a genuine warmth and brotherhood off-screen. The films that they made together being a beautiful, terrifying legacy to the magic of their shared madness. Aside from his feature films, Herzog is known for his extensive list of documentaries, which he often narrates himself or shoots alongside his features, though this has presented its own set of challenges. While traveling around Africa for the film Fata Morgana, him and his crew were imprisoned because his cameraman shared a similar name with a wanted German mercenary in the area who had been given the death sentence. They were later kidnapped by local militia, held at gunpoint, and subjected to beatings.
I do understand French, but I refuse to speak it. It's the last thing I would ever do. You can only get some French out of me with a gun pointed at my head. It actually happened to me. I was taken prisoner in Africa, and drunk soldiers on a truck, all of them 15, 16 years old, some of them 8, 9 years old, and I mean really scared. One pointing a gun here, and I tried to explain that they probably arrested the wrong ones, and captain of them shouts at me, "On ne parle français ici." Here we are speaking French, so I had to say a few things in French. I regret it. Should have done it.
True to his filmmaking philosophy, Herzog had this to say about this experience. It forces real life, genuine life into the film. Werner Herzog often directs the theme of his documentaries towards nature and its relationship with man. This also places him in extreme situations on the farthest edges of the natural world. While filming La Soufrière, he interviewed the residents living on the island of Guadeloupe as an active volcano was about to erupt, some of whom were ready to abandon their lives, though thankfully, the volcano never ended up erupting.
I have nothing at all, and I'm waiting for death. You see, this is how I'm waiting.
In Grizzly Man, he recounts the life of Timothy Treadwell, a man who had spent years studying and living among brown bears in Alaska, until he and his girlfriend were attacked and killed by one in 2003. Herzog went through over a decade of the man's personal footage, even flying to Alaska to get up close and personal with the grizzlies himself. His documentary, Encounters at the End of the World, took him to the frozen landscape of Antarctica, where he ponders how man can coexist with nature at its harshest, and in places such as this, asks the essential question: could even penguins experience madness?
Is there such thing as insanity among penguins? I try to avoid a definition of insanity or derangement. I don't mean that a penguin might believe he or she is Lenin or Napoleon Bonaparte.
But could they just go crazy because they've had enough of their colony?
These penguins are all heading to the open water to the right. But one of them caught our eye, the one in the center. He would neither go towards the feeding grounds at the edge of the ice, nor return to the colony. Shortly afterwards, we saw him heading straight towards the mountains. With 5,000 kilometers ahead of him, he's heading towards certain death.
The director has never been one to shy away from absurdity or go back on his word. In the mid-1970s, Herzog became acquainted with a young student, Errol Morris. They made a bet that Errol would never be able to complete his first film, and if Werner ever lost, then he promised to eat his own shoes. Fortunately, Morris did complete his first documentary feature, Gates of Heaven, in 1978, and Herzog, in true Herzog fashion, held up his end of the bargain. He went so far as to have his shoes cooked at the restaurant Chez Panisse for the full gourmet experience, though he declined to eat the sole, having been quoted as saying, "When you eat a chicken, you leave the bones anyway." The whole affair was filmed by Les Blanc, director of Burden of Dreams, and turned into the short documentary, Werner Herzog Eats His Shoe.
I didn't mean to eat this shoe in public. I intended to eat it in the restaurant, but I was pushed a little bit into it, and it makes sense to some extent because it should be an encouragement for all of you who want to make films and who are just scared to start and who haven't got the guts. So you can follow a good example. He borrowed money everywhere and he stole and I don't know how he did it, but that's a way to do it. If you want to do a film, steal a camera, steal raw stock, sneak into a lab and do it.
Despite all his mad antics, Werner Herzog, more than any other filmmaker, understands that films are dreams, and the richest, truest visions grow from living life to the fullest, away from the lens and silver screen, in the reality of the world that is so often far stranger than fiction.
We are thieves. We get away with loot from the most beautiful or the most scary or the most spectacular places that you can ever find. Just hit and run and get away with film.
Herzog has proven to be a true rebel who has broken all the rules of life to become an example of how filmmaking can offer us freedom from the imaginary bars we cage ourselves in, if only we are crazy enough to try.
This movie's all over. What are you going to be doing?
I shouldn't make movies anymore. Should go to a lunatic asylum. right away.